Let's hear again what Nigel Farage said.
John, I used to be a currency trader. The pound has been in a falling market since July 2014. The pound will continue to go down regardless which way we vote on Brexit, and that's because our Chancellor has made such a pig's ear of our national finances.
Okay, we're now joined by Jonathan Davis from the brilliant Booms and Bust podcast here on Talk to Me Radio. He's an economist and a wealth manager. First question to Jonathan has to be, is Nigel Farage correct, Jonathan?
John, how can you question a fact? What he said was the pound has been in a downtrend since July 2014. I'm looking at a chart of the pound against the dollar, and it has been in a downtrend since the summer of 2014. It's a simple fact. I say to you again, as I've said to you in the past, in an economic upcycle in the last 20 years, up to the dot-com bubble, up to the housing bubble, and up to 2014, the pound has risen. In each of the down cycles, or indeed recessions, 2000 to 2003, the dot-com bust, the housing bubble bust, 2008, 2009, and indeed in the slowdown that we've been experiencing for the last couple of years, the pound goes down. This is now 3 economic cycles. It has nothing to do with Brexit or Remain, and it has been said recently, the pound fell sharply on the day that there was a poll that came out that the Leavers had a few more votes. Well, you know, every asset, whether it's gold or shares or bonds or indeed a currency, moves on a day-to-day basis. There is no correlation whatsoever. This is market fact. No correlation to Brexit. 2014 was a year and a half before we even had a date.
Can I just clarify that completely? You're saying the drop we had yesterday had nothing to do with the polls. If the poll had come out the other way, the pound would have still dropped. That's what you're saying. All the papers are wrong, yes?
Nobody can state that categorically. What I can say to you is, as a guy who watches the markets every day, and I have done for many, many years, assets move day to day. You have asked me, would the pound have done something different under another circumstance? I cannot answer that categorically. What I'm saying to you is, no one can show any correlation between Brexit and the pound.
So
there is no correlation.
Okay, if we voted for Brexit, again, people are saying there would be some economic turmoil. Do you believe that would happen?
Absolutely the opposite. First of all, the markets, again, whether it's the stock market, the government bond market, the currency market, there would be no effect on the markets whatever happens on the 23rd of June. The markets are far bigger than whether or not Britain is part of the EU. The markets is the global economy. The markets is what's happening in the 2 or 3 largest economies on the planet, being the US, China, and Germany. It's not what happens whether or not Britain is part of the EU. And by the way, if we do vote to leave the EU on the 24th of June, we will still be in the EU.
Yeah, for at least 2 years, absolutely. What do you make of Nigel Farage's general point, and Gove now, and indeed Boris Johnson, this whole idea of an Australian-based system? Will the financial markets, will the big money people like that, or would that restrict their development, do you feel?
It goes back to what I've been saying. They don't care. They have no interest whatsoever. First of all, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan They don't care about the intricacies of what's happening in economies. And secondly, your question was about their staffing. We're talking about Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Citicorp and Barclays and HSBC. These guys will get their staff from wherever they want, and under whatever economic and political circumstances we have, they will get their staffing. Oh, and incidentally, if, God forbid, the great British public actually vote to remain in the EU, then I tell you, the city, Canary Wharf, will be hammered over the next 5 to 10 years. You just watch, John, your listeners just watch, how many jobs leave the city and go to Frankfurt, because Brussels is out to get the City of London, because it can't stand the fact that London is the second biggest financial centre in the world. It wants it in the heart of Europe.
Now, there's been allegations that people like Stuart Rose, who want us to remain and are leading the Remain campaign, that he's actually admitted that EU migration and migration actually suppresses wages in this country. So what will be the net effect if we stop this freedom of movement, do you feel, to the wages of lower income people in our great country?
It seems to me logical that if there's a reduction in the number of people who will come here for very low wages to get started, and also, of course, it's subsidised anyway by the living wage and or should I say, sorry, the working tax credit. If we stem that tide, then inevitably employers are going to have to pay more, because there's going to be fewer people who are prepared to work for such low wages. So yes, if we stem the tide of people coming from Eastern Europe, then I would expect lower pay to rise. I don't know what that will happen, what that will do overall, like to professional classes and the banking classes, but to the lower pay, sure, I would expect lower pay to rise.
And what do you feel? I mean, obviously you and I have had many discussions, both on air and off air, when you come in to do your podcast, and I think both of us were beginning to get a bit pessimistic about whether Leave would win. Are you dancing a bit more of a jig this morning after hearing Gove and Johnson taking these policies from UKIP? What do you think? This is now with your political hat on, Jonathan.
I fear that Remain will win. I think the bookies are far more intelligent than the pollsters. Look, of course, how the pollsters messed up completely in the general election last year. And the bookies have still got the Remain to win. I'm fearful. It breaks my heart what the Remain voters are going to do to our children and to our grandchildren.
And nothing's changed your mind? This policy initiative overnight hasn't changed your opinion?
No, I think the policy announcement is a good one, in the sense that we've had a lot of people saying, but we don't see the vision for what it's going to be like should we vote to leave. Well, this is part of Vote Leave, putting together the vision of what it will be like should we, in fact, vote to leave. And I think Vote Leave need to do more of setting out the stall of not how bad it's going to be should we remain, but how good it's going to be and what it's going to look like should we vote to leave. And one thing I'll entirely agree with you on, Nigel Farage needs to be up there with Gove and Johnson, and also what's the German lady called? The Labour
Gazelle, whatever her name is,
yeah.
Stewart, yeah.
Gisela Stewart, yeah. So that would be UKIP, Conservative and Labour on the front platform. That's what it should be. Okay. Whether or not it's going to be, that's up to Vote Leave, but Farage should be there.
Jonathan Davis, thanks for joining us. Jonathan Davis, our Booms and Bust podcaster.